We seem to think that the only way to get ourselves to do anything is through guilt and self-criticism. Especially as men, we think that this is the only way we can stay active, we can get things done. So if we don't bully ourselves into working out, into cleaning, into eating better, nothing will happen. It's always some variation of, if I don't do XYZ, then I won't feel any sense of fulfillment unless this gets done. Then we feel like failures, we feel like trash. But what if our approach is wrong? What if we can approach things differently? The truth is that we can rewire our brain. So instead of avoiding feeling bad, which is what most of us use for motivation, we can actually chase feeling good. Once you truly process that last statement, you can understand that it doesn't have to be the old way. And understanding this might be the answer to the discipline issues that you've been looking for. I definitely know it was for me. I can absolutely relate to this because once I made that switch, discipline became a lot easier. It's almost like a switch flipping in your head. I mean, deep down, we understand that positive motivation works better than negative. This is quite obvious. You will do things for people that you love, and you'll do things that you love quite easily. But it's not always easy to make that shift when it comes to things that you don't particularly want to do. You feel me? But this way of shifting things in your mind makes sense. So instead of telling ourselves, I have to work out or I'll feel like trash, what if we were to switch that and reframe it in our mind to, lifting and working out will make me feel confident and make me stronger? You see the difference there? So instead of something that you have to do, it's something that's going to benefit you. Or let's say you have a mindset that if you don't complete a certain task, you'll be a failure. But if you were to switch that in your brain and tell yourself a different story, like working on this aligns with the life that I want to build. Now, it sounds a lot better. And I know when you hear this at first, you think it's too good to be true. But reframing our thoughts this way makes things so much easier to be consistent with. When you're not beating yourself up, it's a lot easier to be consistent. Guilt-fueled productivity is only a temporary fix. We can do things just because they make our lives better, not because we feel guilty. I hope you could catch that. Do things because they make your life better, not because you're trying to escape guilt or some sort of self-inflicted hatred. David Goggins calling you a bitch will only help for so long. He was in an environment in which he could thrive with that negative self-talk. You're more than likely not. And I've relied on negative motivation for a while, and it does work in the short term, but it's not sustainable. It's really not sustainable. And at some point, forcing yourself out of guilt and self-criticism will drain you. So instead of pushing ourselves to avoid failure, we need to start pulling ourselves towards success. Now, I'm going to break down a few things that I've learned so far on my discipline journey that's going to help you with this mindset shift. The first thing is that your brain is wired for threat detection, not happiness. Threat detection, not happiness. Your brain looks at difficult things like it's a threat. So if you keep trying to reinforce yourself to do things by making negative statements or feeling negative about you not completing something or not staying consistent, your brain is going to do everything in its power to sabotage you. It doesn't like that feeling. It feels as if it's being threatened. So that's the main reason why negative reinforcement rarely works long term. It might work for a short period of time. You know, some dudes, they get dumped or something traumatic happens and then they make a major shift. But for the most part, if you're trying to self-inflict it, it's extremely difficult to remain consistent. The second thing is dopamine isn't just about pleasure. It's actually more about motivation. So there's a lot of talk about dopamine and what it is, but dopamine is actually what gives you motivation. So they've done science experiments with rats where they have fried their dopamine receptors and then the rats would actually stop eating. So you really need to be careful during the course of the day about what is eating up your dopamine reserves. So are you scrolling too much? Are you watching too many dirty videos? Are you doing things that are frying your attention, which is going to take away from your ability to be disciplined in other areas? This is extremely important. The third thing I learned is that your thoughts are not orders. So you're not trying to order yourself to do something. You can't force yourself to do something. You thinking about the guilt that you're feeling for not doing what you're supposed to do is not an order to your brain. Your thoughts are just thoughts. So you need to step away from the thoughts and focus on the systems. This is where we struggle a lot because we think that we can think our way into a different habit, but our thoughts are not orders. What's going to make things easier for you are the systems that you put in place. For example, as disciplined as I am, I have a tendency to eat all of my kids' snacks. Why? Because it's right there. Yesterday, my wife and I had a conversation about this because I told her if she was to just put it in a different cupboard, I probably wouldn't eat it. So my thinking tells me to stick to my macros and don't eat things I'm not supposed to eat. But because of accessibility and I don't have a system to avoid it, it makes it extremely difficult. So if she was to just move it, and I got to take responsibility, so I'm going to move it and just put it in a higher cupboard, I won't eat it. So just remember that you can't rely on your thoughts alone. We have to realize that it's the systems that will make us or break us. The fourth thing is to stop letting your brain ruin your life, which is almost kind of linked to your thoughts are not orders, but your brain is an extremely great self-sabotager. It really wants to keep you comfortable. And you have to almost look at your brain as something separate from you. Something that is a mechanism that is meant to keep you safe and comfortable, but it's not working in your best interest. You are not your thoughts and you are not your brain. You exist outside of that. And a lot of people have a difficult time actually comprehending that, but you are different from your brain. You are different from your thoughts. Your thoughts are for observation purposes only. You get to choose which ones you want to stick to. So remember that your brain is actually primitive. If you're cold, it wants to keep you warm. If you're stressed, it wants to keep you away from that situation in the future. So it'll keep replaying it to make sure that you avoid future pain. Your brain is not working for you. And a lot of times it's working against you when it comes to the things that you want to do, especially when it pertains to discipline. So just remember that your brain is primitive and it's up to you to actually switch it and become more of somebody that looks and sees the pattern that your brain wants to follow and then gets away from that and do what you actually want to do. That's the only way to defeat the brain, is to look at it, see what it's trying to do, and then move to a different direction. The fifth thing I've learned is that your attention is constantly being hijacked, and so you have to take it back. Now, it's extremely difficult to keep your attention locked in all day nowadays because there's so much distraction. So the best course of action for us is to find a time block, either in the morning or the evening. And this particular time block you're going to use to get the most out of positive attention. So whether that's improving yourself through reading, meditation, whatever it is that you want to do, prayer, whatever it is that you want to do, we should have a certain time during the day in which we could put our undivided attention on those particular things so that we can practice actually having an attention span, because our attention span is constantly being attacked. So even something as simple as sitting in silence for a couple minutes, 10, 20 minutes, is a huge help when it comes to taking back your attention, because your attention is what's going to lead to discipline. If you're able to concentrate and focus, that is discipline. So getting back your attention is key to actually gaining the discipline and the strength of mind to do whatever it is that you need to do. The sixth thing that I learned is that you have to train your mind like an athlete. We have to think of ourselves as athletes, mental athletes. There is nothing more important than your mind, and doing things like I mentioned earlier, like meditation, reading, even listening to podcasts, because we all learn in different ways. If you do these things consistently, it's akin to going to the gym for your mind. This, in turn, is going to build your self-discipline. Even if it's for short spurts at a time, even if it's nothing crazy, you don't have to do hours a day. You don't have to do anything too crazy. What you just need to do is to figure out what you can do consistently that's going to help to build you. We have to constantly be improving and constantly training our minds in order to actually get where we need to be. And it's as simple as training a muscle. It's no different than shooting a basketball or lifting a weight. The more you train it, the better you become. And you can purposefully do this by building these small micro habits that over the course of a year add up to a massive amount of time putting into your discipline and self-improvement. The seventh thing that I learned is that our emotions are critical to our success and our discipline. So if we don't have control over our emotions, then we might as well have no discipline. Because if you really think about it, when you are emotionally unstable, how can you remain disciplined? If every single time you get angry or depressed or sad, you run and eat some things that you know you're not supposed to eat, or you get off your schedule, you just can't really maintain discipline over a consistent period of time if you just don't have control over your emotions. A lot of what I talk about is about self-analysis. So we have to learn to keep it real with ourselves and just take a look at how we react to things and give ourselves an audit on our emotions And if we can fix these things, these character flaws, then it's really going to help us with our discipline. Now, the last thing is extremely important. Number 8 is burnout is actually more about a lack of recovery than actual exhaustion. So if you feel like you're doing too much, it's probably because you're not resting enough. We really undervalue rest, and in society nowadays, especially with hustle culture, and I hate that word, but it's good for this particular sentence. With hustle culture and whatnot, they seem to push this thing that you shouldn't sleep. And that's exactly how you get burnt out. Sleep as much as you can. I learned that lesson earlier this year because I decided I was going to wake up at 4 a.m. 7 days a week. Now, normally I would sleep in a little bit on Sundays to kind of recoup on any sleep that I missed out on during the week. And just a couple days into the new year, I got sick, and I almost never get sick. Why? Because I wasn't getting enough sleep. So when you are well rested, it is a lot easier to stay disciplined. When your body's tired, you end up doing a lot of things you're not supposed to be doing. You end up scrolling. You end up eating the food that you know you're not supposed to eat. These are the patterns that we follow when we don't get adequate rest. And it's something that we really need to address if we want to maintain discipline. So those steps are the 8 steps that can help us start to see our minds, our discipline, and our habits in a new way. And look, we don't have to rely on guilt or self-criticism to push ourselves forward. If that works for you, fine. But you don't have to depend on it, because from my experience, it doesn't really last. So I think the real key is learning how to pull yourself towards success instead of running from failure. Pull yourself towards success instead of running from failures. These mindset shifts can be the difference between whether you're struggling through life or actually enjoying the process of leveling up. You could start small and just apply 1 shift a day, and you never know. You might start to see some changes that you weren't able to see when you were guilt tripping yourself into being disciplined and having successful habits. With all that being said, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.